everybody. Welcome to the Faith and Fandom podcast. Today, we are joined by Chad Poe. Chad is a pastor and like your whole movement now, right? Like, Chad's out of Texas. Tell us who you are, Chad.
Hey guys, my name is Chad Poe. I would be hesitant to call myself a movement. I am a pastor, as Hector mentioned. Actually met Hector years ago, traveling, speaking at events. Right now, I still do that while I serve as a teaching pastor at Grace Bible Church in Lake Jackson, Texas. I'm currently training pastors, college pastors, youth pastors in how to be better communicators through what I call through-line cohorts. And I would love, if you're interested, to be part of that. And I host a podcast called the Hold On Podcast, where we spend time with various Christian voices and ask them questions that have nothing to do with anything that they are known for. So we have lots of conversations with very well recognized theologians about their views of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we talk to various Christian podcast hosts about what it looks like for them to give 5-star ratings to items at Trader Joe's. We really have a great time on our podcast. So yeah, that's me, man. And I love it. So, and excited to be here today talking about one of my favorite television shows.
And so with Faith and Fandom, you've been familiar what you've been doing for a hot minute with the books and everything else and cons and stuff. Would you qualify yourself like per se as like a geeky pastor, or are you just kind of like moderately geeky on the low, or where are you at?
It depends. I mean, everything's subjective. So if we're having this conversation, I'm comparing myself to you. No, I'm absolutely not. I am a novice, a Padawan, someone who calls you from time to time to find out why this happened or what's going to take place next. But for many of my friends, I serve as the voice of comic book and Star Wars reason. So it all depends upon where you land. It reminds me a lot of, in all honesty, we have this sweet little senior adult at my church who knows nothing about technology, but she is the technological guru of her friend group. So it all depends on where you are.
I remember, and the first time we ever connected, and that I ever I think it was the first time I'd ever heard you speak, was like my youth group was at a camp, and I was with them, and I think either the first or second night you talked about Super Mario Brothers in your sermon. And I think I was like, oh, I'm gonna go talk to this guy.
It's funny, you came to visit me the next year. I was speaking at the same camp. It wasn't very far from you, and we just hung out.
Yeah,
we really stayed in touch. You visited my church in Chattanooga when I was there, so you've been a great friend over the years.
And you've been really just encouraging through the whole process with my wife and cancer and everything else. You've been one of the folks that have just really been a big encouragement with that. So really grateful to have you here today. And today we're going to be talking about Ted Lasso. And just because you're one of the more vocal people that I've seen on social media about your feelings towards Ted and your thoughts about it and everything. How did you, when did you jump on? When did you get on the Ted Lasso bandwagon?
Early. I watched it on opening night. The first episode was released, and some friends of mine, I have a text thread that at one point was called Peyton is the GOAT, as in Peyton Manning is the GOAT. A friend who did not like Peyton Manning changed it to Peyton is a GOAT. And then someone who may or may not be me changed the name of the thread to Your Mom is a GOAT. That thread now is known as Ted Lasso is the GOAT. So we love Ted Lasso. We have an ongoing conversation about it. I find Jason Sudeikis fantastic. In general, I give him like a 7 or an 8, but right now I think he's operating on all cylinders in this character that we need.
He's levitating at this point. Did you see any of the Ted shorts before it was a show?
Yes, when he was in the NFL shorts on the commercial. Yes, I remember those, and the idea that we could conjure up a television show from that speaks to the minds that created it.
I'm just like, at what point did you get from point A to point B to this is your sales pitch to get that? And So how did you already have Apple TV, or did you get it just for this?
I had Apple TV because I had just bought a new device. I'd
Okay.
either bought a new Apple TV and they give it to you for a year. They're always trying to get you to get a new device to get Apple TV for a year. So I had Apple TV for a year, and it just so happened to line up in this perfect world of I need a new device. Can't remember if it was a phone or an iPad or whatever, or I need a new whatever that thing was. And we're in the midst of a pandemic where everyone's sad. Can we please be happy? Oh, there's a man with a fantastic dad mustache dancing with his football team and moving to eat fish and chips.
I think I've missed out because I didn't know about this. You buy a device, get Apple TV for a year free thing. I didn't know that was a thing.
You're an Android man, Hector. That's why.
You're right. And I'm recording this on a new MacBook Pro that I just got like maybe 3 months ago. So I'm like, I've missed out. I didn't know that was a thing.
You should follow up.
I'm up. See, I'm already growing from this conversation. So outside of, you were there on the premiere. I don't think I jumped on until we were already in season 2. And it might have been the second or third episode was by the time I had made it in on the conversation. And it was solely because it wasn't on Apple TV. Or because I'm sorry, I didn't have Apple TV. And I'm an Android person. So I was like, no. I'm like, I went as far as to try and purchase the series on Amazon. And you can't. Like, you just can't buy it.
It's exclusive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most exclusives you can still go to Amazon and purchase.
I think Apple knew that they had their hooks in you pretty early on.
Yeah. And so like it took me finally, I think I'd somehow landed on Ted Lasso, the Ted Lasso end of TikTok. And where like everything I scrolled through was a Ted Lasso quote or speech. And I'm like, this is good. I want to see this. And a lot of people I respected, like you and some other folks, were like really beating that drum. And I'm like, okay. And I think it was the dart speech is what finally, like, I landed on that, and I'm like, okay, I got to do this. And so coming out the gate, you said you started out right at that. How did you feel just like even after the first episode? What was your general take?
The plane ride with him and Beard and the interaction between the two of them, the nature of their relationship, reminded me a lot of some of the friendships in my own life. How you have someone who serves as a base for you, and the fact that Beard served as that for Ted was very much was encouraging and beneficial. And just the absurd idea that these two men who know nothing about college football or rather who are college football coaches would move to England to coach a football or a soccer team was it's absurd in premise, and you almost roll your eyes at the concept. But this should never be a television show, yet they draw you in. And Ted is such a contrast to everyone he comes in contact with. I believe it hit in this perfect moment where you have this positive force in season 1. Ted is an overwhelmingly positive force in the life of everyone that comes in contact with him. And you watch him interface with the negativity of disgruntled professional athletes. And you watch him win over someone who is in full-scale opposition. She brought him in to ruin things. Spoiler alert. If you're listening to this, I shouldn't have to give you a spoiler.
All the spoilers.
So there's so much. There was something special about the character, and there was something special about the characters that they placed around him, whether it be a Beard or even in season 1, the way that Ted speaks life and value into all the characters in general, But specifically, when you look at his relationship with Nate and his relationship with Roy and his relationship with Jamie, and the way that he is a unifying force for every one of them. Now, I've had numerous people point out there is foul language in Ted Lasso. And I get that. So, Vid Angel, if you need to.
Boy, Vid Angel's going to work overtime.
Vid Angel's going to get her bonus. But for me, the positive of this person who sits in the midst of every one of these neutral or disgruntled or sad or broken characters, all the while being broken himself. And you don't see that initially. Ted just has everything together, and then
that really hits about through the third quarter of season 1. Yeah.
Well, yes, but I'm having a conversation with one of my best friends about the show. You think Ted has it all together as this galvanizing force, then you see that his life is in shambles.
Yeah.
That he's moved away from his family, that the reason he's done so is to give a wife space who wants nothing to do with him. And you begin to peel back the onions of who this person is, and you see the veneer that he puts up for people to, just for people to look at and
well, it's a lot of it's the overcompensating for, one of the things you see so often in, I think pastoral ministry and in, life, and so much of it in the faith community in general, is the things that we emphasize are the things that we're trying to compensate for, the things that we have deficit in. So when we've experienced hurt and trauma ourselves, we over emphasize those things. We try to actually be those forces in the areas where we're kind of weakest ourselves. And, for him to be coming from the place he is to offer that kind of like unrelenting positivity, and it's a trauma response. It's and so much of it what he does it, but literally the thing is simple as literally first episode about him remembering Nate's name and his shock and awe that he's like, no one ever remembers my name, stuff like that. It's how simple just the little things actually affect so far. Or even remembering Sam, or doing something for Sam's birthday. It's the thing that you don't have to do huge things for it to be powerful, and that even a few small acts of genuine kindness can go a long way in relationship building. And I think one of my favorite lines is right when Roy is walking out of Ted's office for the first time, and he was just talking about how he was furious, and then Ted says, just wait until we win him over. Oh, and then Roy, and then Beard comments back. It's just the thing, they intentionally knew out the gate that they were there not just to do whatever, that they were there to change the climate. And I really appreciated that.
When you look at Ted and Beard, you do see the weight of what Ted carries, and you do see almost an element of a Samwise Gamgee's character. And I don't want to overread into the person of Beard, who who goes into this world with him, and it is present. He is consistently present in this man's life. As much as we can talk about the kindness of Ted, you can see loyalty and the faithfulness of Beard in it all, even though Ted was taking Beard into a world that Beard obviously says, this is, we don't know what we're doing, but I'll go into this. I will go to Mordor with you.
I mean, there is a strong Samwise Gamgee vibe to Beard. And here's the thing too, in so often when you're talking about, and I love when Ted is asking Beard for the right before they play, to give him the breakdown of, all right, coach, what do we need to do today? Aggressive, move fast. I mean, it's just he gives him a single phrase, but even in the Samwise Gamgee vibe is that where Ted is just blindly walking into most of this. If you watch subtly and everything, Beard's always doing the homework. Beard's always doing the grunt work, the heavy lifting of it. Like even on the plane, he's reading soccer books.
Ted was not reading soccer books. Ted doesn't know anything about soccer.
Right.
Ted's a terrible coach, but he's a fantastic motivator.
And Beard's doing his best to coach beyond Ted. But that's the thing. Like sometimes I know that I've found in ministry life, because I like to be the number two. That's my spot to be preferentially. Like I would rather be a strong support than the front man. And I know that there can come a time where it's really frustrating when you feel like you have to lead beyond your leaders. And when you need to actually go before them and at the same time remain beside them. And like Beard has done that. And the only time you really see Beard even put up resentment to it is, a couple times, but it's usually valid points as well. But their relationship has been strong, and I've really appreciated what Beard has brought to it.
Is there a player that you look at and say, I love this player and I love them because of this? I'm asking you questions like it's my podcast. It's not.
You go right ahead, bro. You do your thing. I appreciate the discourse. I love I love Danny Rojas for being Danny Rojas. I mean, it's just like the vibe. One of my favorite like little life discrepancies that's happened recently is how like video games are developed like years in advance, right? Like they don't just drop out 1 month at a time or whatever. So the main character for the brand new Far Cry game that just came out like 3 weeks ago is named Danny Rojas with the exact same spelling.
Wow.
And they are Latin American characters. And it's just like they were designing this game and these characters before Ted Lasso was ever pitched. And so to drop it in the middle of Ted Lasso season 2 and your main character is Danny Rojas, I'm like literally every time like you start playing the game and within a few seconds it's like, we need to find Danny Rojas, they're leading the rebellion, and I'm just like Danny Rojas. It just kind of it took all the seriousness out of the like threat of the game. But I really enjoy Danny for who he is and the positivity of, I mean, it's just blind positivity, but it's just good. I feel like they put more depth in Sam than most characters get in their entire runs of show, just little things, and what he's doing. I think Roy, I mean, as a player was great off the gate, but I mean, Roy's almost just an over the top comical depiction of everything. And then the fact that he was a writer of the show and not like meant to be a character, like not to play that character. And that, he went from writing it to sending an audition tape in to his friends to do it. That's just like, I've loved a lot of that. And my favorite thing is anytime, you're doing well when you can make the hero the villain and the villain the hero. And to make Jamie lovable, I thought was a big step too. So I mean, I've enjoyed a lot.
What worked for you in season 1 that, I mean, it was hitting on all cylinders in season 1, and I argue I'm a fan of season 2, but there are people who like to complain about it, but whatever.
I love season 2.
What worked for you? What plot lines worked for you? What didn't? Were there things that did not work for you?
Things that didn't work for me in season 1
or season 2.
Okay.
I'm very linear, so whatever we need to do here.
I think the thing that worked for me the most in season 1 was like I think just the character development, because for this to be a show called Ted Lasso and it not just be about Ted, I thought was a big thing. Because usually when, there's a title character that's actually the namesake of the show, it usually just becomes that. There's plenty of episodes where other characters had more character development than Ted, and I thought that was a big deal. But again, writing for a team is good. Just what it did. Freaking love Higgins, man.
What a victory this season when this underdeveloped character in Higgins, everyone shows up at his house for Christmas.
Right. And that was such a big deal. And, I felt like they took the time to highlight a lot of the other characters that didn't get as much love. Like the Higgins got his Christmas episode, just like Beard got his party night and with the boys. And I'm a Downton Abbey fan, so seeing Higgins come from Downton to there was like a big deal.
Oh yeah, man, from being a servant to where he is now.
Yeah.
So for me, watching the Christmas episode with Higgins and the development there, when you see those guys playing with his kids, I thought about the people in my life who are well known for whatever reason, that are respected in whatever way, and what it means when they interact with my kids and how beneficial that is. Yeah. So you've got Higgins, and who's this loyal, faithful dad who goes out of his way. And even in season 2, you see him. There's something to be said about someone who keeps moving his office for the betterment of other people. But when you begin to watch the Christmas episode, and you've got these athletes who want to be at this house because lots of them are missing their father, and many of them don't have there is something powerful in that. And in how the table, I loved how the table kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there is so much imagery for us. It's not intended, no, but there is so much direct imagery for us in the invitation that God has placed, that I'm going to offer this invitation, and there is no limit to my table. We're never going to run out. There is capacity for you here. Come be with me here. That Christmas episode was something special.
It really was. And I'll say this too, one of my favorite parts of, by the way, like a lot of my pastoral staff have jumped on this now. And so like when people say awkward things in staff meetings and stuff, we go, and like we make those noises now. So we'll just like send each other emojis of like Higgins making that face. But one of the things they said that was real subtle in the Christmas episode, his wife said to him, "You've become popular. Like, we've never had this many people here," and stuff like that. Higgins became popular because of Ted's influence and encouragement to actually be present. Because Ted's the one that told him to be in the locker rooms. Ted's the one that actually invited him in to actually be involved with the players' lives. And here's the reality too. I feel like a lot of Higgins, for all of his positive qualities, for what he did basically to aid and abet Rupert, basically kind of probably sucked some of the joy out of his job and how he interacted with others. And when Ted started to slowly like force him to like stop living in that capacity and actually be more of a person of integrity, because Rebecca kept throwing it in his face of, where was this integrity when all these things were happening to me? And the fact that you can't compensate for your integrity lapses in the past, but you can do it in the future. And I think that the Christmas episode and a lot of what we see in Higgins was him actually developing as a person, because I feel like Ted kind of opened some doors for him to actually do that. Someone to actually say to him, "Hey, you don't have to keep sucking," and be involved with that.
What are your feelings about the arc that they placed for Rebecca in the show?
Well, if this was any other show on any other network in any other capacity, I feel like Rebecca would have always stayed as the two-dimensional douchebag, evil boss, queen person.
Sure.
And the fact they took such a strong turn and arc, and by the way, like, high five to Keeley, because like as a character, like I enjoy her development too. But I really like the Keeley Rebecca dynamic. But for her, the whole thing for Rebecca plays out to me with the locker room conversation that they have, where she is forced to, not at that point forced, she goes to tell Ted, what she's done. Yeah. Like, I feel like that was the turning point, or the climactic moment in that. And, Ted even says that in season 2. He's like, "You came here last year with a big jaw dropper or whatever." But I really feel like she was so bound up in her wounds and her resentment towards the years that she had wasted, that she poured toxicity where she could, and she sought vengeance where she could, to the point she wasn't actually enjoying who she was as a person. As like Sassy said, that's not Rebecca. That she was pouring toxicity wherever she could because of her wounds, and with that, and when Ted actually forgives her, like, I think that there was a good portion of her that her whole character shifted, because not only was she kind of getting freedom from what she was doing to Ted, but also she was able to let go of what she was trying to enact on Rupert. And with that, she was able to actually let go of just the bitterness that she was holding on to with it. And I think I love how dramatically her character shifts at that point. And I think it's a strong conversational piece of what happens when we actually let go of resentment and bitterness and unforgiveness, just the weight of that, because she was actually kind of free to be a person after that.
I felt like in season 2, I did not love the dynamic of where they went, and you can cut this if you need to, the relationship with her and Sam, because if that had been inverted and you had a 50-year-old man, and I don't know how old Rebecca really is, but a 45-year-old man who was in a relationship with one of his employees,
With a 21-year-old employee,
that would be incredibly problematic.
Oh, absolutely.
But it wasn't, it at least did not get played for that in the episode. Though I do believe, and I've read and listened enough, that's a possibility in the future when you begin to consider she wouldn't cut Sam when Sam made his statement against their original sponsor. She would not cut Sam. Then she's in a relationship with Sam, and their new sponsor is the company Banter that she met Sam through. So I'm not sure if in the future we're going to see that play out. I believe we will. I would not be shocked in any way if we did not see that becoming a problem. So here's a hard question for us to consider as Ted Lasso fans. What do you do with Nate?
Okay. Now, I mean, here's just one of my favorite points, the things that I loved watching over season 2. And I'm doing a rewatch now because I'm writing stuff for the book. First of all, like, when I first heard Nate's like aggression towards Ted in the finale, like, my initial response is like, that's completely dude, you're just, like, it was like I was to deflect everything. If you go back and watch, Ted was actually pretty cold and distant to Nate once Nate was actually on the coaching staff. Like, if you doing a rewatch, I'm seeing stuff I didn't see before. Like, one of the things was like when they score their first big goal. And I think it might have been the first big goal when Roy was on the field. Like, Nate had finally worked up to wearing his suit and everything else. Like his suit, he was going to look dapper. Ted complimented on that, and he had the gray, not perfectly fitted suit. And then Roy walks onto the field in his perfectly fitted black suit, and he's instantly overshadowed. Nate's instantly overshadowed. But when they score the big goal, that Nate had a hand in helping make possible, Ted literally moved Nate out of the way to go hug Beard and Roy. And I totally missed that the first go around.
Sure.
But my favorite little detail is, like, because you could tell with the bitterness where they were heading with it. But season 1, Nate's hair is straight black, like no grays whatsoever. Every time Nate does something douchey or a little more bitter, he gets a little more gray in his hair, like per episode. If you go back and just watch the timeline of Nate's hair, the first time you see him really express his bitterness, little gray. The next time you see it taking him over, a little more. So when we get to the finale and we cut to the where it's heading with Nate with the other team, and he's in the full gray, it's like they literally did a Gandalf the Gray to White situation inverted. Like, you saw him physical manifestation of how dark he was getting.
If you were, you also see there is, yes, obviously, the moment Roy walks onto the field, it is obvious that they are creating a situation, creating tension.
Right.
On top of that, you have all that's taking place with Nate and his father. And there is a imagery in the fact that when he was at the restaurant, he spit on the mirror. When he spit in the episode with Ted, and he never ever expressed to anyone frustration until it bubbled up and boiled over with Ted, all the while ignoring that Ted was going through something pretty traumatic himself. There's an ignorance of, there's almost this ignorance of, okay, it seems like Ted has it all together, even though he's admitting he has this traumatic, that he's having anxiety attacks. But it seems as if Beard, rather not Beard, it seems as if Nate looked and said, oh, well, but I still have my own situation. And my own situation trumps that. There's a lack of, I would almost say there is, on the part of every character, there is a sense of self-reflection, being overwhelmed with themselves, what they're going through, and not seeing how we operate in the collective, even though we're having a conversation about a team sport.
Yeah.
What was is there one moment in the show where you would say, I wish, if this was real life, this is a real life show, I would like to have been there for that? Where would you like to have been?
That's a great question. Wow.
I'm going to give you some options.
Go ahead. Give me some options.
I'm going to give you three options. If you had to pick between these three, because I believe these are the three super powerful moments for me. The dart scene with Rupert.
Okay. Barbecue sauce.
The scene where Jamie's dad is a complete buffoon.
That was actually the one I was thinking about, like in the locker room scene.
And Roy goes and hugs him. And then the victory, the actual win.
The Roy Jamie hug. Like I that's the thing. When I was pausing, I was thinking through, like, because like being me, my first thought was I would want to be there to stop Jamie's dad. But I mean, I know it needed to play out expositional wise, but like I think that would have been mine, was like to be there for that. I just like the protector in me wants to be there for that, but the comfort of me also wants to be there for the aftermath. That would be where I would want to be.
So my wife and I were watching, but we were watching late that night, and she dozed off, and she woke up to me weeping. I'm not uncontrollably or inconsolably, but just full tears in my eyes because Roy Kent was hugging Jamie Tart. Do. And she said, "Are you crying over Ted Lasso?" And I said, "Yeah, well, you gotta watch this." It was one of the more powerful scenes I've seen in any television show in the last 10 years. When I begin to consider characters of television shows that are monumentally influential, whether it's a Michael Scott or a Leslie Knope, or even when I begin to think through how much I loved Jack Shepherd, I don't know if we've ever, again, I don't want to overspeak, our moment in time needed a Ted Lasso.
Oh, 100%.
We needed Ted as a character.
So where's your moment?
the Jamie Roy scene is there. The thrill of victory. I don't know if I could pick between those two. The thrill of victory. There's something sweet about the dart scene, of course. The low key MVP would probably be what takes place when Ted brings in the street musician to play at that big at that fundraiser.
Yeah.
That was pretty powerful. The Christmas scene, there are so many strong scenes. I would probably say when Jamie and Roy, that was something else. And then Ted getting on the phone, man.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, I don't want to be there for that because that's uncomfortable, but
right.
It sets that up in
Ted talking about his father with the psychiatrist on the phone was a big deal. I think that one of the big things that the overall arching theme that I really take from the show, especially from midway of season 1 through season 2, is that most of these characters are impacted the most by what they've internalized and aren't dealing with. From Nate obviously having identity issues with how his father has treated him. Not that you can put it all on his father, but like the reality of that he's so hungry and thirsty for praise that when he finally gets some, he loses himself in it. That Rebecca is, as she said, that she had basically crafted her life to please someone else, and then lost herself in that as well. That when you're looking at these characters that have all this stuff they're dealing with, the fact that Ted overcompensates, and not in a negative way, but he overcompensates encouragement for others because of what it's done, he's seen happen to them. And the fact that, when you learn that his, as she said, relentless positivity is what drove his wife away. Like that he was willing to, that he let him overcompensating for what happened to his family and through him to be a positive force for others, but to the point that it would tear his marriage down because he wasn't truly dealing with the trauma of what he actually went through with his own family. And I just think that that's one of the things you continually see in this, is that when you don't actually process what you're going through and find healing in it, that it just overflows. The same thing with Jamie, with dealing with the stuff from his dad. I mean, there's a lot of very entertaining, broken, heavily burdened people that are just interacting in this show, and I think they're all kind of finding little breakthroughs in the stuff that we're seeing. But I think that's one of my favorite things, is just the fact that you can see that if you're holding on to these things and not dealing with them, it's erupting in some way, whether it's Nate going full Bond villain, Rebecca literally trying to sink millions and millions of dollars and hundreds of people's jobs just because she's being petty. I know she was wounded, but like there's a lot of lives that would have been destroyed with that. I just think dealing with our, not even just feelings, but dealing with the burden of what we're carrying with us can literally just suck the life out of ourselves and everyone else around us.
That's good.
So for you, like, what has been if there's one theme or thing that you've taken from the whole of Ted Lasso, what's it for you?
Well, it's got to be believe.
Go on.
Right.
Speak on that. Let me hear it.
Ted has formed this collective of people. It's literally a team, but it's not just a team. It's everyone who works for the team, but all of them have come together around this idea of what it means for them to be a united force that dealt with loss in season 1 and got to overcome that loss in season 2. All the while they're moving together as this unified force while they're working through their own stuff. And as they work through their own stuff, it doesn't mean those things have ceased to exist, but just because that stuff is happening doesn't mean they get to negate their place in the in this AFC Richmond franchise.
Right.
So Rebecca has her place, and Keeley has her place, and Higgins has his place, and you see how it affects them when someone goes off and does their own thing. It makes me think a lot about what takes place in a church and how, whenever we read through the scriptures, we live in the 21st century, and where we have commercialized and consumerized everything, and we've used phrases like quiet time to explain our interaction with the Bible, and I can sell you a Bible project, and I can sell you this, and we made gospel into an adjective. All of this stuff that takes place around Christianity. When you read through the New Testament, every letter is written to a collective of people. Every letter is written to the church. Even the letters that are, when you look at the letter to Timothy, it's written to Timothy for the church. All the while, these people are still going to have their own stuff going on. You can see that Paul addresses it in the epistles. Jesus deals with it with the disciples. They're kind of doing their own thing. Let me sit at your right. Let me sit at your left. That's not for me to give you. It's the idea of what we see in the Gospels, where the centurion comes up and says, "Hey, I want you to heal my son." And Jesus basically tells him to believe. And the man says, "I do believe, help my unbelief." To be united with something that's bigger and greater. And for Ted Lasso, it's the idea of we're bound together as this unified force. For those of us who say we follow Jesus, we're bound together by what Christ has done for us. And there are going to be moments for us, hesitations for us, obstacles to overcome, where yes, we believe in Jesus and this sacrificial message that he's given us that calls us to clothe ourselves with compassion and kindness. I need to believe that, but I need Jesus to help my unbelief in those moments where I want to step away from being part of what is this body of people that is bound together. That's what I would say. And I hope that makes sense.
No, makes sense. Absolutely. It's real subtle. One of my favorite little things, because you know how sometimes too often in your TV, like once you get to the end of an episode and credits start rolling, it just jumps to the next thing so often. I'd missed it the first time. Like it was after one episode, probably about midway through season 1, where everybody leaves the locker room and Roy's still sitting there. And then Roy just gets up, walks over and taps the believe sign and walks out.
Yeah, man.
That was like I was just watching through my rewatching the other day, and like I'd missed that the first time, and I'm just like, oh. And the same way, like I think that was like Nate blowing off at Ted it hurt me, but it didn't hurt me like that when it actually showed the sign ripped in half. That was like that kind of struck me with that, and it's like the complete rejection of all that they were going with that. Asking you this. It's the perfect ending to this series. There's one season left. How does Chad Poe want the story and the show to play out?
Well, it was written initially for 3 seasons. There is no way Apple's not going to look at Jason Sudeikis and say,
I'm with you. Like, let's just go with there's one season.
If this is the last season,
how does this end perfectly for you?
oh my, I don't even know.
I can pitch you some of mine. You
Throw that out, because you're gonna have to edit this. My silence. I'm typically not silent.
I'm not scared of silence. It gives us time to think. I feel okay. So 1, Ted's gonna get healthier through therapy. This is not a prediction of what'll actually happen. This is my Hector edit. Ted's going to finish some more therapy process, some more healing. There's going to be a reconnection with his wife. He's going to go home. Their marriage is going to get back together. I'm not saying that's perfect or that I feel like his growth just in season 2 with processing things, I think he's going to make an amends with his wife where he actually apologizes for bulldozing through positivity where he should have dealt with some pain and stuff. I think that'll actually bring them to a place where I don't think the show will end with them reconciling per se, but I think you'll see steps of it and he'll go home. I think Roy will become the coach. I think Roy and Beard will take over. And I think by the end of the season, Nate's going to get fired and they're going to bring him back in and let him be the third party. I think Beard's going to stay in England with Jane. And I think they're going to stick around and do that. Higgins is going to be Higgins. They're going to be fine. Rebecca's going to live a happy life. And I think one of the biggest things is that Jamie and Keely are going to end up back together. I think that's going to be a thing with growth and everything else. And I think Roy is going to end up with Phoebe's teacher. And
I don't need Keely to end up with anyone.
I don't either.
Character-wise, I think that for her character growth, someone who started out dependent on other people, I believe to show her maturity and for her to be okay to be without someone would be a big, would make a massively positive statement. I don't want Ted to leave. I want Ted to stay there for the rest of his life. I want. It's so strange to think about. Yeah, the other side of the whole series, but I do love all that. Like, I want all those bows to be tied and me to be happy. I mean, for me, I pick I've watched shows before, and when they ended, I thought to myself, oh, why'd they do that? This was supposed to make me feel good. If you were going to recommend, let me ask you this. If someone were to come to you and said, hey, I've watched Ted Lasso, that was awesome. Can you recommend something for me while we're in this Ted Lasso drought? What would it be?
Gosh, man.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that either.
I mean,
because it's so
I feel
different.
like comically Leslie Knope is a distant 10th to that. Like, she's not sincere as Ted, but I feel like Leslie Knope has she's Ted adjacent, but like not on the same level. Honestly, Avatar, the last Airbender, the closest I got with Uncle Iroh. Like, Ted Lasso and Uncle Iroh would get down.
I don't even know what that means. You're speaking a different. This is where I'm a Padawan. This is where I'm learning.
So, in Avatar: The Last Airbender, there is basically a wise, loving uncle that forgives everyone.
Gotcha.
And honestly, just on a side note, if you ever get to the point you, as a family or anything, watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, the series, not the movie, it's worth watching to meet Iroh. Okay. Iroh, for me, is in my top 4 fictional characters of all time.
Oh, wow.
And it's a tight 3-season show, cut to finish. And Mark Hamill plays the bad guy, and he's wonderful.
Mark Hamill is a good bad guy in everything.
Right.
I don't know how it's so ironic for that. He is one of the quintessential heroes in television or in movie history. Yeah, he's such a good villain.
Oh, he's a great villain. And they just dropped the trailer for the second half of the He-Man series, and he's full Skeletor going crazy with that, and it's just a blast. Perfect. Too. I don't know what I could honestly recommend to someone that would be Ted.
I just saw it. So I asked that because I saw this thing that said it was on some social media and it was product placement. If you like Ted Lasso, you'll love these shows. And it was basically recommended, you'll just like these shows. And it was random things that are in no way similar to what Ted Lasso is. But yeah, I love it. I Love Lucy was on there.
Okay.
Schitt's Creek was on there. Parks and Rec. So you make a good point there, but it was, you'll just like TV shows is basically what their point was. So
I feel like Ted Lasso, Uncle Iroh, and Shepherd Book all fit in the same huddle, but like from Firefly, but I don't know that there's anything that has this ensemble. I will tell you this: my alternative idea of where the show would end and make me happy is Ted stays in England, but Beard and Roy go to America and coach football. I want to see Roy Kent come to America and coach in the NFL. I want that. That would be a happy spinoff to me.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening, but I appreciate your attempt.
No, I just make me happy. I don't think it'll be reality, but it would make me happy.
Well, if your listeners have not watched Ted Lasso, hopefully they will. And if your people have watched it, I'd love to know their thoughts on what was their moment. Was there a moment for them that they thought that this is one I would like to stand in? I would like to be right there for this. The overwhelming emotion to the scene that we chose is that's just woof. That's rough, man. So much happening.
When you look at them, I don't know that there's ever been a show in recent years that has had such a dramatic effect in terms of the response to father figures. From Jamie and his dad to Ted and his dad to Nate to Ted. Like there's this thing with father figures and the impact of it. And how about Sam having a great father? I mean, I love the fact they're actually throwing in a good dad here and there as well.
Ted's a good dad. I think Ted's a good. Yes, Higgins is a great dad. So you have this counterpoint that is helping us to see, and there is something good about warmth and about compassion and about care. Those are not things that fathers don't do. Fathers should be those things. We should be that in the lives of our children.
And just say too, Rebecca's whole dad situation was another thing, but yeah.
Whoa, that's rough.
Let me ask you this, and you're aware of like the reality of Jason's actual life over the last couple of years, right? What's been going on in his world
with his divorce.
Yeah.
And yes.
So looking at his life is pretty much a actual depiction of Ted's life.
Okay.
Like from how it all played out, the separation, the distance, the fact that he's literally in England away from his kids while his family's getting divorced and processing all that. How much do you think of what we're getting in Ted is him processing and dealing with what he's going through personally? And yeah.
I don't know. I would imagine that I believe that everything contributes, even though even we don't realize it. I begin in my own life. I can think about in retrospect, the number of times I've stood on stages or the number of times that I've been asked to have conversations, and me being able to speak into where I happened to be, it definitely was impacted by all that has taken place in my life, even though I'd not considered that. I'd not thought about the fact that my childhood struggles and wounds, that those were part of me trying to express that this isn't everything. There's more to life, that there's more hope than we realize, that there's someone who makes us whole, that Christ is the one who makes us complete. And how whatever I walk through, was part of and present in presentations that I had not even considered it in. And how, when I look back at my life and I consider, I mean, raised by my grandmother, the way that I see women has been shaped by her. So if I am speculating on
No, I'm purely
Seneca's,
speculative. Yeah.
I'm assuming that everything that he's been through is, we're going to see that present in this show moving forward. Even now we're seeing it.
Yeah.
Or at least it seems that we're seeing it. But again, I don't know what's going on in his head besides hilarity. Did you notice the shows became longer?
Yeah.
And it moved from comedy to dramedy.
And it went from 10 episodes to 12 episodes.
Right. Well, that was Apple cashing in, like cha-ching.
Yeah, I mean, which is like when you get like the Beard episode and some of the other stuff, like, yeah, we needed a time for Beard to shine, but that was also a cheaper episode. For sure.
What an odd episode.
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed that he wore those pants to the Emmys. So that was a cool thing too.
Yes, he did.
So ask you is just, kind of wrapping up. I mean, you told me that your big thing you took away from is believe. What do you feel like a believer could take away from this for spiritual encouragement, or just through the whole process? What would you hope that a believer that watches this show will take away from it?
Well, I would hope they would not find cohabitation to be awesome. I would hope that they would check. I would hope that they would not believe that they exist in a bubble. So these things that I don't want you to take away.
Okay.
I would hope that if someone has a relationship with Jesus, they would just, this person in particular, Ted, and then the various other characters from various different angles. This is how compassion, this is how kindness really plays out. Or just get a small picture of what that fruit of the Spirit at work looks like. That they would look at the various loyal characters and they would see, this is what faithfulness looks like. This is what loyalty looks like. Just giving you a small glimpse of it. Not a perfect glimpse, but we don't get to have perfect glimpses. Just a little window into a reality that isn't always necessarily ours. And I think you get that when you see Ted. I think you get that when you see even Roy in his VidAngel words. There is something about loyalty there. There's something about commitment. There's something about care. There's something about every one of these things that we as Christians would say matter to us. You can see those in these different people. This is what a good dad looks like. This is what an open table looks like. That Christmas table scene really did stand out to me. I'll come back to that. This table that's open, that's inviting to people from all over the world who have no home. You've got a home here. To people who are far from their people and lonely, you can be with others here. There's something beautiful in that, and we don't need to miss it.
Awesome, man. Anything else you want to share with the people before we?
No, man. I thank you guys so much for listening, and I'd love for you to interact with me in other places. So
where can people find you?
You can find me at Hold On Podcast. You can also find me at Twitter at Chad Poe, at Chad Poe. Also on Facebook, or rather, on you can find me on Twitter at Chad Poe, Instagram at Chad Poe, and I'm the host of the Hold On Podcast. I'm a pastor at Grace Bible Church of Brazos Port. So if you would like to stay in touch, please do. Thank you so much.
Is there like a favorite episode of the Hold On podcast that you would recommend? Like, this is the one you need to jump on or check it out first.
We talked to Dr. Moore he's now at Christianity Today. He used to be Ethics, Religious Liberty Commission, Sub-Baptist Convention. We interviewed Dr. Moore. We had Mike Cosper, who does the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast. Those are both great episodes. We just had the ladies from the Big Boo cast on with us, and they're incredibly hilarious. It's a fun time. All of them are fun times. And we ask questions that we want you to answer in your head as you're waiting for us to give an answer. It's great.
Is there like for your church work or anything like that, do you have any messages that are like out there you would want anyone, if they want to just hear a sermon of yours or anything, check out?
Yeah, if you were to go to YouTube, you can just look up Chad Poe. I did convocation at Liberty University 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a great time. And my consistent messages are at my church, it's Grace Bible Church of Brazos Sport. There's a bazillion Grace Bible churches, but we are of Brazos Sport. So
we'll put all the links and stuff in the
please do. We'd love for you guys to listen, interact. We're actually going through the Gospel of Mark right now. I just finished Jonah, so it's been a good time.
Well, sweet.
Hector, you've been such a good friend. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, my pleasure, dude. And once I get the rough draft of this Ted Lasso chapter 2, I'm gonna send it over to you before I'll drop it out on the world.
Please do, man.
But Chad, thanks so much for joining with us today. Thank you all for listening. And we hope that if you are Ted Lasso fans, that you enjoyed the conversation. If you managed to listen to all of this and watch all of this without being a Ted Lasso fan, you probably should go ahead and watch it. And
spoilers.
Yeah, too late for that. And we'll see you around after season 3 hits.